National Prosecuting Authority has referred some 129 unsolved apartheid-era crimes to the Hawks Directorate of Priority Crimes Investigating Unit. This comes after long-standing calls for the NPA to prosecute apartheid-era crimes. The National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, then established a specialist unit in 2021 that would focus efforts in prosecuting these cases. Since then, there's been little to no movement with this year's allegations of political interference, in the case were raised as far back as 2019. Calls for an inquiry into this then emerged. Author and nephew of Ahmed Tamal, an anti-apartheid activist who died after sustaining head injuries while in police custody in 1971, Imtiaz Cajee, joins us now to reflect on this and what possibly could come out of this. Imtiaz, good morning. Thank you very much for coming into studio. Good to see you.
Good morning to Dizile. Many thanks for the invite.
Perhaps let's just talk about your uncle. What have you been told about him? Who was he? Who is he?
Look, to Dizile, firstly, I must state that I'm speaking in my personal capacity as the nephew of the late Ahmed Tamal. I was 5 years old when he was killed. I was 12 when another uncle of mine went into exile. And I kept on asking my maternal grandmother, who is this uncle of mine? Why is there this deafening silence in the family? Why won't my mother speak about her brother? And you know, that generation dealt with grief and pain differently. But for me, Duduzile, it traumatized me. I read the newspaper cuttings that the family had kept. Remember, there's no Google, there's no internet. I'm talking in the 80s. And I'm trying to process in my mind this individual, this uncle of mine, or go with my grandfather to his grave, and my grandmother would ask me, did you pray for your uncle? You know, so I witnessed all of this in the 80s, and we were blessed as a family. We had everything. But I was troubled because the majority of people in the country were marginalized. They were discriminated against. People were being killed by the racist apartheid regime. And I wanted to avenge my uncle's death. And I started this journey to pierce this picture. Here's an educator. In the 60s, making a difference at the Rhodoput Indian High School, encouraging female students to study further, breaking racism barriers in Rhodoput, when the social club was only, invitations were only given, membership was only given to Muslims. And yet he fought for the Hindu community to get access to the Rhodoput social club. So these are all the things that I've been reading about him, and piercing this picture together, and to understand what transpired. And the newspaper cuttings in 1972, based on the inquest, were very clear that he was a communist, he was going to, the Rooi Gevaar, the Red Danger, he was going to blow up the country, and he was a threat to society, and as a communist, he had to take his own life. That was the narrative. And remember, the 1972 inquest ruled that he had committed suicide. And he was the 22nd person in 72, in October 71 to have passed on. Lux Martin Lulia I in 1963, given a pauper's burial. His wife came down by train from Cape Town to Pretoria to be told your husband was given a pauper's burial. So I lived with these difficulties, family finding it difficult to confront. Remember, difficult times, today we can sit and we can speak freely, despite all the challenges we face in the country. And it was accepted. Then we come to the 1990s. Obviously, euphoria, celebration, there's freedom in this country. And my maternal grandmother, Duduzile, did not want to go to the TRC. She says, but I've relived my entire life since my son has been gone.
Yeah, I think that leads to my next question, right? Because a lot has been said, and as you rightfully mentioned, yours is not the only family that experienced this trauma. Yours is not the only family that found dissatisfaction in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A lot has been said about the unfinished business of the TRC. Maybe explain to us why your maternal grandmother refused to go and the family's position on the TRC.
Look, like many other families in the country, she was asked to come and testify. She had issued a statement to the TRC commissioner. And she could not understand, why must she go and testify? How is she going to benefit from testifying? Remember, her husband, my grandfather, had already passed on. And she refused. And I think because of my special relationship with her, I convinced her and I said, Ma, look, it's important for you to go and relive. and testify to the country. So she went in 1996. She relived, she went into great detail of what she had experienced, what she had endured. And for me, that was the time I had a breakdown. You know, I had heard her telling me the anecdotes for years on end in the comforts of her home. But something happened that day when I heard her testify to Luzile. I broke down and I made a silent promise to myself. And I said that from this day onwards, in 1996, I'm going to do something about my uncle. I'm not sure what, I'm not sure how, but I'm no longer just going to speak about him. And she testified, and about 10 months later, she passed on. In 1999, President Mandela renamed the Azadville Secondary School the Ahmed Timol Secondary School. Again, a very significant moment. You know, somebody of the stature of the former president renaming the school. But again, to Luzile, for me, as I sat and I watched all these dignitaries paying tribute to my uncle, I said, it's not good enough for me. Yes, we can rename schools and pay tribute to him, but for me, I need to know what happened to him. I need to know who was responsible for taking his life. Why did they kill him? Why did the apartheid-era inquest rule that he had committed suicide? They had smeared his name. They had discredited my maternal grandmother. Magistrate de Villiers had called my grandmother a liar, you know, when she testified about her son. And this then provoked me to start conducting research. So at the TRC in 1996, I was 30 years old, naive, not understanding the political systems in the country, but just celebrating the democracy that we had acquired. And then I started doing the research. But I also started the process, engaging with the National Prosecuting Authority in 2003, where I write to them. And I, in my investigations, identify a number of police officers that are still living. And I'm saying, but you need to go and interview them. 2005, with your sister station, again, they confronted 2 security police officers directly implicated for interrogating my uncle. And in 2006, Luzile, the NPA closed the case. They shut down the matter. They said there's no evidence. It already emerged that João Rodrigues, remember João Rodrigues, according to the police version of events, Luzile, was in the room 1026, when my uncle had allegedly committed suicide. He had placed himself at the crime scene in 1972. At the TRC investigator located him, interviewed him. And then Rodrigues said, no, he's not prepared to cooperate. And the TRC did not subpoena him. All his superiors operating at the John Foster Square police station were all living at 1996 when the TRC was held. And when I approached the NPA from 2003 to pursue the matter, they shut it down.
You would know more intimately than us, or maybe have a hunch as to why. There were a number of sunset clauses when we went into this democracy. You speak of a promise that you made to yourself in 1996 after you saw your maternal grandmother break down. It's 2022. What does your hunch tell you about why we're seeing these delays?
Right. So let me just take you quickly through the process, and then I'll answer your question. So I published a book in 2005. The president, Mbeki, writes the foreword because he and my uncle were comrades. They had trained together in the Soviet Union for 9 months. The minister in the presidency, Isuk Pahad, was instrumental in supporting me to publish this book because it was a book dedicated to their comrade. And around 2007, 2008, I realized that there were missing pages in my book. The book was excellent, it was well written, but it was a biography. I did not confront the issues that needed to be confronted in my 2005 publication. And then I start the process of investigating and researching from 2007, 2008. And I'm already being told and advised that you should not pursue this matter further. You are going to create problems.
By whom?
People surrounding me. They saw what was coming if I continued pursuing this matter. Fast forward, I reached out to the Foundation for Human Rights that set up a team to assist me. But when I went to them, I had conducted my investigations. Now it was about his arrest, his detention, his torture, and his death. And the team assembled by the Foundation for Human Rights worked with me. We approached the NPA, and we know in 2017 the Ahmed Timol inquest was reopened. But when they announced the reopening of the inquest, they did not find João Rodrigues. They had assumed that he was late, he had passed on. And all my investigations, I was unsuccessful. So they made the decision to reopen the inquest on the premise that there was no security police officers implicated in my uncle's arrest that were living. That was the premise on which they reopened the inquest. And then, a few weeks before the inquest was opening, João Rodriguez's daughter, Tilanda Stander, reached out to me. His daughter. And said, Imtiaz, I watched the media and the reports are that none of the security police officers are living. But I'm telling you that my father is living. This is his address. This is his website.
He has a website.
He had a website. He was an author, a Bushveld author, writing, publishing books.
Yet it was so difficult to get hold of him.
The NPA and the Hawks police were unable to find him. And when Tilanda reached out to me, obviously we then confirmed and then he was subpoenaed to testify. So if it was not for his daughter, he would have probably watched in the comfort of his home the reopening of the Timor inquest in a democratic South Africa. We know the outcome of the inquest. Judge Mote ruled that my uncle did not commit suicide, he was murdered in police detention, and that João Rodriguez must be investigated for his role in the murder of my uncle. Now, without a doubt, there was huge euphoria and support, overwhelming support, during the inquest. But remember, this man is implicated for not making a full disclosure on what happened to my uncle. And then I start pursuing another process to say that this man must be criminally charged. For 6 months, the NPA gives me the runaround. The DPP in Gauteng, Andrew Chauke, makes a decision, sets up a team. 30th July 2018, Rodriguez is charged, criminally charged, and ready to go to court. The NPA is ready to go to court. For the period of, 4 years, 19 court appearances, his court matters are delayed. His legal team, Duduzile, then bring out a 342 application, a permanent stay of prosecution, saying that the client must not be charged. What are the arguments that his legal counsel presents? Political interference at the NPA, secret amnesty deal, parallel to the TRC process, questioning as to why the TRC did not deal with the Rodriguez matter when all his colleagues were living it during 1996, why the NPA did not deal with the issue in 2003 when I reached out to them. And finally, they speak about the Constitution, that his rights will be infringed in terms of the Constitution. Now, I ask myself this question. We're living in a democratic South Africa. An alleged apartheid-era accused police officer turns to the Constitution to defend his rights. And my question is, what rights do we have as families?
You broke it down for us in terms of your understanding of why it's taking so long to prosecute apartheid-era crimes. You spoke of secret amnesty deals. You spoke of political interference. Help us understand what you're talking about when you mention political interference. So
Dudu Zile, his legal counsel, the 342 application is heard by the full bench of the South Gauteng High Court. And these are the arguments presented by his legal counsel. And the full bench dismisses the application. This is around July 2018, if my memory serves me correctly. The matter then goes to the SCA in Bloemfontein only in November 2019. Look at the time lag. Argument is again presented in June 2021. Memory serves me correct. The SCA dismisses the application. The matter must now be heard at the apex court in the country, the highest court in the country. And because of the lengthy time delays, which I totally hold government accountable for, Rodriguez passes on. And as soon as he passes on, the Concord dismisses the application from the courtroom. So, in my view, there was a deliberate strategic attempt, successfully implemented, to make sure that the Rodriguez criminal trial does not commence. And I have it on good authority because I've done the research, that there was going to be explosive evidence that was going to come out at this criminal trial, that was going to implicate individuals. So if the Constitutional Court made a ruling on the issue of secret amnesty deals, on the issue of his rights being infringed in terms of the Constitution, then we would have set precedent to know exactly what would transpire in all the other cases that are currently unfolding throughout the country. And that was lost.
You speak of implicating individuals from old or individuals from today?
Remember, my investigation was to identify and establish as to how my uncle was arrested. On what basis was he detained? And the police narrative was that he was detained by chance. The police roadblock was purely coincidental. And I disputed that in my second book that I published in 2020, called The Murder of Ahmed Timor, My Search for the Truth, that his underground operations, where his handlers were in London, was compromised. his underground operation was compromised.
By whom?
The security police, security apparatus had infiltrated his underground cell.
On information from whom?
Most certainly. And remember, I'm investigating a cold case. Let me give you an example of the difficulties and challenges that you face. Democratic South Africa, Duduzile, apartheid-era records remain classified. 28 years later, they remain classified. We have gatekeepers throughout government departments that manage the control of these apartheid-era records. When they're made available for reopening of inquest, it's done selectively. They are sanitized. How do you conduct investigations, reopen apartheid-era inquest, when all the documentation that remains locked up in government departments under this government is not made available to the public? So these are the kind of challenges that I've been facing. I'm investigating a cold case for more than, 5 decades later. And that is why last year, when they celebrated, as part of the Amar Kathrada Foundation, and his comrades commemorated my uncle's 50th anniversary, I did not participate to do it. I had written a letter to President Ramaphosa saying that I'm not participating in that particular event, and there are questions that he needs to answer. The late former President F.W. de Klerk, a few months before he had passed on, his foundation issued a press release saying that these matters must not be pursued further because there was an agreement between the ANC and the Nationalist Party. This is de Klerk's statement.
Imtiaz, with everything that you have been saying, in my mind, all I can replay is a scene from a movie. I can't remember for the life of me what movie it is, and it's quite famous. You want the truth, you can't handle the truth. So no one should determine for you whether you deserve to get the truth or not. But if we take a look then at current day South Africa, you still hear a number of politicians saying that they want to address systematic issues, right, that are still plaguing South Africa 28 years down the line in terms of changes not taking place. Lindiwe Sisulu was on the channel a few days ago speaking to my colleague Kathy Mutlatlana, speaking about the issue of land and righting the wrongs, and she also cited the Constitution and problems with fixing that because of the Constitution, which then should tell us what? I mean, you're fortunate enough to be able to, even if you're scratching, to put together resources in search for the truth. You were 30 years old in 1996, and in 2022, and you're still searching for the truth. What then should that tell us, right? That what is this? What does this tell us? What should we then believe from this? Is it all a lie? Is it all a game? What's going on?
You sum it up very nicely. Let me just break it down for you what my investigations have unearthed. So I had to deal with this. Why, when I'm pursuing Rodriguez, the so-called comrades that were so supportive during the inquest, all backed off, and are now asking questions, but why are you pursuing this matter? It's too painful. So I had to go back and do investigations. And it took me back to the negotiated deal that this country had undergone to avoid civil war, as we are told. The deal between the ANC and the Nationalist Party, and how this deal was structured, how it was managed. So when we talk about the land issue, we talk about the issues around the economy, who controls the economy. These were all the issues that were part of the secret deal that took place between the ANC and the Nationalist Party. And part of that particular deal was that apartheid-era perpetrators were going to be given a blank check. The crimes of apartheid has been placed on Eugene de Kock and Ferdi Barnard. And all the senior Nationalist Party politicians and police generals were all scot-free at the TRC. That is the reality. And my findings point back to the transition, to the deal that was structured. Simply put, outgoing authoritarian dictatorship regimes don't hand over power willingly. They don't have a change of heart where they go to church on a Sunday and decide, no, we need to treat the majority of people with dignity in this country. They hand over power on their terms. And what for me is very evident, that they handed over power making sure that they remain in total control in a democratic South Africa. That is why the wealth continues to reside with a few from the apartheid era. And all that they've done, they've created a few new oligarchs of color, and they tell us that this is democracy.
Imtiaz Cajee is an author and nephew of Ahmed Timol. He has written extensively and done some extensive research on this. If people are interested in getting your books available at all good bookstores?
So, the first book, there's a free copy available online on my website, ahmedtimol.co.za. The second book, published during COVID in 2020, is available at exclusive bookstores, The Murder of Ahmed Timol. And God willing, the next book will come out early next year. That will, for me, God willing, bring an end and find me closure so that I can close this painful chapter of my life.
Thank you very much for availing yourself and for sharing with us this morning. Ms. Rachel Makura,